Hello, everyone. Once again, welcome to another episode of Second and Saints. John Hendricks alongside Ross Jackson. We're here to talk about Saints training camp. What else will we be
Yay,
talking about,
yay.
Ross? I mean, we could talk about plenty, trust me. But
Yeah,
man, how you
facts.
doing this evening?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. Glad to be here with you. And excited to cover this one because you know what? Now that we got this practice done, the next practice is in the Superdome, and I can't wait for that.
Yeah, it's crazy because that's actually going to be the last practice, last
Right.
training camp practice, because then they
Right.
have the preseason game against the Titans and then final cuts for Tuesday. And then we'll see them Tuesday afternoon, but it's going to be like a really tiny session. And
Right.
then Wednesday, I think, is when we should get them next. And so it's here. Like it's really here. We have almost made it through training camp, Ross. Like I would give myself a pat on the back, but that would probably be really awkward and unprofessional on the camera right now. But I mean, we're almost there. And so again, day 21, we saw a lot of good stuff out there. They started with the outdoor session and then moved indoors, which I think has been good. The heat hasn't been
Mhm.
as blistering. Like I know August in Southern Louisiana is like, I don't know, nuclear level
Typically,
hot,
yeah,
you know what
yeah,
I mean?
typically
Like,
pretty
but
bad.
yeah, but it hasn't been that bad past couple of days, and that's not that bad. Is still like 100 degrees or whatever, or 92 with the humidity and stuff. Like, it's not as bad. Like you're just picking your poison. But I guess where I would start with training camp is Peyton Turner has a toe injury, and that seems to be the talk of social media right now. Is that
Yeah.
Dennis Allen talking about his toe injury? It's the same one he had surgery on. It says doesn't sound like it's anything crazy, but now
Yeah.
it's another injury. It's a guy that I think has had a pretty good training camp overall, but now here's the injury bug towards the back half. Are you worried about this toe injury, or are we taking Dennis Allen for his word?
I think you can do both. That's certainly what I'm doing. I take him at his word that it's just a flare up, and so there's no big concern right now. But at what point does a flare up become, something more recurring or something more serious or re-aggravating and stuff like that? And so I think there's value in being concerned about it from that perspective, while also saying, okay, it's not there yet, but how do you prevent it from getting any worse, right? How do you keep Peyton Turner healthy in this situation, or help to keep Peyton Turner healthy in this situation? So I think that is the big thing that I would watch out for in this one, is not necessarily you know, is it bad now? All right, take you at your word that it's a flare up, not too big of a deal right now, but what does it mean moving down the road? Because this is going to be the biggest thing. Like, Peyton Turner, nobody wants to be on the field more than like Peyton. Nobody wants Peyton
Right.
Turner on the field more than Peyton Turner. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But definitely seeing these types of situations, you feel for the kid, because it's like, man, like so much talent, but just not able to really stay out there. And I think that's the bigger concern than, is it a flare up, or is it, something worse?
Yeah, and we pointed out on Wednesday's episode, like he went down after a play and he was there for a little bit, slow to get up. They were telling him to walk it off and stuff,
Yep.
and he left the field, then came back, finished practice, but now he misses, and so maybe it's more precautionary. But again, it's a big deal, and of course, reason why this is a big deal is because Turner's going to play a lot inside. Like I know Cam is probably going to play inside, but he's also somebody that you need on the depth there. And
Hmm.
Isaiah Foskey maybe hasn't had as good of a back half of training camp as he did with the
Yeah.
first half. You know what I mean? And so again, I don't know how much stock I'm going to put into that because we have seen two preseason games, and I get it. People have said, well, you can't get anything done against like third stringers and stuff. And I mean, we've seen the hops, we've seen the potential in camp, but it's at some point it's got to all come together. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right. And look, the Saints are looking for both of those guys, Isaiah Foskey and Peyton Turner, to elevate the floor of their edge rusher group. You know what the top of it is, you know what that's all going to look like, but like these guys are immensely talented and just have to be able to either put it all together in Isaiah Foskey's spot, like maybe get back to where he was mentally at the beginning of training camp, where he was kind of playing a little bit more freely, making some plays. I thought he had a nice day today. He had a big tackle for loss at one point, or no, sorry, he had a big run stop at one point. Then he had a sack later on
Yep.
in the practice. And so you'd love to see him compound that a little bit more going into Sunday's matchup against Tennessee. But for me, the one that is kind of more so in the prove it part of the conversation is Peyton Turner. And it stinks when the thing that you have to prove is health, because how much control do you have really?
Yeah, I know it's unfortunate. I mean, and everybody's different, and I think one of the things that Foster Moreau said today, aside some of his colorful comment that he said about 49ers game,
Yeah.
a lot of guys are playing hurt right now, like because
Yeah.
they're trying to make their mark on the team, and look, that's a reality. Like every single morning in California, we saw these guys go to a tent, and whether it was some type of treatment or not necessarily treatment, but some type of preparation for them to be able to practice. And so I don't use that as an excuse because at the end of the day, a lot of players play hurt, right?
Yeah,
And
it's part of the job.
it is part of the job, and
And
so
I don't say that in a dismissive way. I say that in an understanding way, by the way. Like
yeah.
it is what it is, you know.
Yeah, yeah, and so it's just one of those that it happens, but for Peyton Turner, a first round pick that, really is in a contract year and needs to produce, this is just obviously not ideal, and Saints fans are having a field day with it, and I
Oh, yeah.
understand, I get it, right? You know what I mean? So, we'll see what happens. It'll be telling if he's at the Superdome practice.
Yeah.
I guess some good news though. You got to see Rico Payton back a little bit today, and he was kind of working off the side. Didn't really do as
Mhm.
much. Same thing with Mason Tipton, but they both
Yep.
were in pads, helmets. So at least for me, that tends to suggest that they should be okay. Maybe at least Peyton is okay to play in the finale against the Titans. I don't know about Tipton, but I think he's going to get ramped up between tomorrow, and then obviously they make an evaluation on Saturday and Sunday and see
Yeah.
where he's at. But good to see those guys out there. Taliesin Fuanga back in team drills. That's obviously a huge, huge thing for
Big.
them. That was a really welcome sight to see him. Pete Warner still kind of observing. He hasn't really gotten into the team drills. That could be because of contact. I don't know, but he's coming off that shoulder injury. What other maybe just quick attendance notes that I'm probably forgetting off the top of my head did you pick up on?
Oh yeah, I mean, one of the big ones was the return of Juwan Johnson to team drills. So we
Ah,
saw Juwan, right? We
yeah.
saw Juwan like get back to practice and stuff like that. But this was really the first time he got involved in team drills. Unfortunately, first pass goes off his hands. He drew Carl Granderson in coverage somehow down the right sideline. Carl Granderson not in an ideal situation in that moment, but it was also the first pass that he's been thrown in a team drill situation since what, OTAs, I guess, OTAs mini
Yeah.
camps. And everything. So, you let that slide, but he caught a nice slant later on and everything like that. I wrote a piece this morning just about all the different ways that he contributes and how he helps that middle of field attack that the Saints have put so much emphasis on over the course of this offseason. His ability to, get those extra 4 or 5 yards after catch that Derek Carr praised Michael Thomas for being able to do when they, got Michael Thomas to stick around last year. The way that he contributes in terms of versatility, all this other stuff. So really exciting for the team, I'm sure, to see Juwan Johnson back. We also saw not we also saw, but the other one I was going to say was the Rico Payton and Mason Tipton thing.
Mhm.
I'm with you on that. I think Rico to me seemed closer in terms of his amount of work than Mason Tipton did. And so if there was one of those guys that had the potential to play this weekend, it feels like Rico Payton's the most likely one. But you'd love to get Mason Tipton out there. Like he was
Yeah.
there through the whole installation and
Yeah.
everything. Like he's got all that. And then now he's probably been, back there working on the mental side of it and everything like that. And now he's just got to see if he can get back physically. But that is some good news that, he did get to make it through the installation of everything before getting to the Arizona game and all. I think those are the biggest, but I think that covers all of the biggest kind of attendance returns.
Yeah.
We did see some other stuff go on. Oh, you know what? Lucas Patrick back today too after the cramping yesterday. Welcome
Yeah,
back to
yeah.
New Orleans.
And Jonathan Abram. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
another one too. It's just the small things. Yeah, look, and you mentioned Mason Tipton. I'm spoiler alert for anybody. I put it out on social media and I joked with the Willem Dafoe meme, but Friday morning, my 53-man roster prediction is coming out, and I know people are not going to be happy about it. But I just based it off of 21 practices I've seen, information I've gathered, 2 preseason games, and look, I got to be honest. It's just like I don't know that a Mason Tipton has done enough to make the final roster, but also in the same breath, at this point, I don't know if he's a practice squad guy, because if guys like Kevin Austin Jr., Stanley Morgan Jr., or Samson Nakua, it's just a habit to mention Puka, right?
Oh yeah, for sure,
The
100%.
Nakua family. But I think those 3 guys in the past, little bit since Tipton has gone down, has really stepped up their game. And so, again, it's going to be hard because you only get 16 practice squad guys. 6 of them can be vets. 10 can be, players with the light experience. And I just don't know at this point. Like, I think he's talented, but the injuries, when you don't be or aren't are able to evaluate these guys, it makes it difficult. And so
Yeah.
he's a guy I'm worried about, right? Like, I just don't know if it's not even a matter of making the final roster, but at this point, does he even make the practice squad? What do you think?
Right. Yeah, it's tough to put him on there, right? I mean, it's tough to put anybody on there when you haven't had an opportunity to see them. You'd be banking 100% on the talent. But the one thing that I will say is that he outperformed, some of those guys. Now,
Yep.
he didn't have a lot of overlap with Kevin Austin Jr., didn't have a lot of overlap with Samson Nakua because those guys were added while the team was dealing with injuries at the position and everything. So, you can maybe look at it that way. But I will say that the guys that there are, the guys that he was around, Bub Means and all these others, like he outperformed those guys early
Yeah.
on in camp. So that might be the one thing that maybe you could like rest your laurels on. But I wouldn't be surprised if Bub Means gets really the edge in that wide receiver 5 conversation, being a drafted player. And then the thing that becomes more interesting is, does the new kickoff rule have you keep a 6 wide receiver because you get a solid blocker out of an Equinemius St. Brown or something like that? That has nothing to do with necessarily the receiving prowess, but what can you do as a blocker and how can you help in that on special teams? I think that's got to be a big part of the conversation as well.
Yeah. Spoiler, I only took 5 wide
Yeah,
receivers and
same.
I was torn on the 5th one. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
big time. Same. I'm right there with you on that.
I'm really torn, and I just went with what I feel like the team views. It's not necessarily the
Exactly.
popular
Yep.
opinion, but it would be something that makes sense, right? And
Yeah.
so I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
I guess what, since we're talking attendance and all this other stuff too, we do need to point out that DeMarco Jackson left practice early. He was
Yeah.
trying to cover a route, and he was pulled up. He was even trying to make the play, like he was hopping on one
Yeah.
leg, trying to. Dennis Allen said it's related to a calf. The good news is I saw him leaving practice and
Hmm.
walking.
Same.
So that's a relatively good sign for me. Now, of course, further imaging, other things could mean something different, but we love us some more DeMarco Jackson. He's really
Hmm.
important to this team and special teams. He's had a really solid training camp. So
Yeah.
hopefully it's nothing big there, but it is worth pointing out. And now a guy like Anthony Orji, he's like super important number 1 right now, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because if DeMarco's out for any time or something like that, I got to give that spot to Anthony Orji, you know what I mean? And
Yep.
and I like Khalil Hudson. I think he's still in on this as well. But
Agreed.
it's really hard. Like making this final roster, like if we have trouble making it, which again, what do we know? Who cares about our opinion, right? The guys on airline drive, that does matter, who are formulating this roster, it also means something too. That, like, I think they're going to have a lot of work cut out for him.
Yeah, yeah, it's going to be tough. These are not going to be easy cuts, especially actually at that linebacker spot. I think even moving on from Mike Rose is going to be hard for that team. Like even
Yeah,
he's made some plays, you know what I mean?
linebacker
And so,
factory.
yeah, dude, out of nowhere, it's been great. Hey, you have some injured guys too, like rookie Jalen Ford and Isaiah Stallbird and everything like that. I think those are going to be easier decisions to make, unfortunately, but
Yeah,
there's still
Monty
practice squad
Rice.
potential. Yeah, Monty
Yeah,
Rice as well. All those guys practice squad potential. I mean, remember you can
yeah.
keep just as a reminder for everybody, like you can keep veterans on your practice squad now. I think the limit is 6 of the 16 can be
Mm-hmm.
veterans and everything. And so like a guy like Monty Rice can go there and all. And so there's real opportunity for everybody there. And that's the thing that's really nice about it too, is that like a lot of those guys at that position get elevated on game days
Yeah,
regardless of the numbers at the linebacker position, because again, they can contribute on special teams. So,
yeah.
being a practice squad linebacker means your phone's probably, I don't know if your phone rings or if they just bring you into an office and you get told. I don't know how that process goes, but however that process goes, that process happens when you're a linebacker on a practice squad.
Yeah, and again, we're gonna find out really quickly. Like, again, I don't want to tell you that you know the the final preseason game, this is meaningless, right? Like, but I think
Right.
they have most of the evaluations and they feel pretty comfortable about where they're at, right? I think some people, there could be some jostling here, and I think we pointed this
Sure.
out on past pods, but again, it's just going to be a thing where some of these guys that we've talked about in camp, like it's just bad timing. Like I think if a Jalen Ford doesn't get hurt with his other hamstring, then I think he's more in the conversation. Same thing with Isaiah Stallbird. I was really impressed with him. He's one of my
Yeah.
guys. You guys know that if you've
Yep.
been following this pod. Like, I think he was, and they absolutely love him on special teams. They gave him a good bit of money as an undrafted rookie too, and he was really highly touted. But Monty Rice, he was making strides, and an injury bug. It's just like that's the biggest thing that derails a player, in my opinion, in training camp is as soon as you get an injury, how fast can you get back out there? And is the guy that's behind you going to make his mark in the spotlight? And I think we've seen that at a lot of these positions now.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Big time. Big time. And, every time that one of those doors open, these guys get an opportunity to step through it. Right. And so when they're able to go
Yeah.
out there and step through it, particularly in the practice environments and all that kind of stuff, where they're really putting stuff on tape and they're showing day to day progression in terms of development, taking notes from their coaching staff and all the other stuff. I think all of that ends up being really valuable information. So I agree. I think a lot of the evaluation's kind of done here. I mean, if somebody has a blowout game up against Tennessee all of a sudden, then obviously like you listen to what you
Yeah.
see in that case. But I think it would take a lot to kind of jostle this team from where they're probably already thinking for the most part.
Yeah. And one thing to clarify on Charlie Smith, because I know this is one of the things, he is an IPP player, but the thing is, he does have to still pass waivers. So they can't just
Yeah.
automatically put him on the practice squad. So he does have to pass waivers. And then if they put him on the practice squad as a roster exemption, he can't play at all during the season. So that's just
Right.
a caveat just to keep in mind that if he doesn't get the kicking job, which it's really too close to call right now. Like it
Yeah.
is really close. I don't know. Like I think this is kind of like what it was last year.
Hmm.
Groupie and Lutz, they were too close to call, and I figured Ty goes to the runner, but the Saints obviously felt a lot different about that. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I mean, it's just really crazy. But I just definitely wanted to clarify that for Charlie Smith.
Yeah.
That they
Good point.
just can't put him on the practice squad. He's still got to pass waivers. There's a lot of them. Well, let's see, Jonathan, since you are so gracious for us, is there opening for a Saint Scout so I can state the guys I wanted to speak? Look, again, I because this is what comes up. This is the Kendra Miller thing. We touched on
Yeah.
this before. It's hindsight. I understand, and
Yeah.
I saw the earlier comment about Tyjae Spears' comments about New Orleans and all this stuff. I mean, this does happen, but every team has passed on somebody they should have drafted. You know
Oh,
what I
yeah.
mean? Like, how many teams do you think kicked themselves in the face for not drafting Tom Brady if they knew what Tom Brady was going to be? And he was a
Right.
late pick. Like, he was a day 3 pick. Like, that's just how it goes. I think what hurts is that you trust these guys with the evaluation, and this is the evaluation. You're already drafting a player who was already had an injury history, and this is kind of the concern that comes along with it is that
Yeah.
he had the injury history, then everything seems like it's going to be checked out medically and all this other stuff, and then you get him like later in the process, and he's able to get on the field, then he gets hurt, and now it's a cycle. So I don't think they've given up on Kendra Miller, but at the same time, I don't know, and we've talked about this plenty. I don't know that they just outright cut him. I think he's possibly going to just go to IR. Whether they use him,
Yeah.
carry him a day on the roster and do it, or they just make it at final cuts, which you can do at least 2 of those, like we pointed out. But I just think that's where it's trending because I don't think at this point there's any roster spot for him.
Yeah. I'd have to agree with that. I mean, I guess you could exchange a fullback for him and you can carry 4 running backs onto your roster and then maybe, have the fullback on the practice squad or something like that for the first couple of weeks and then elevate and move things around a couple of weeks in. But there's just a cleaner way to do it now and just give Kendra Miller the time to get healthy for a change and then see what you're able to do with him at that point. I think that's got to be that's the thing that makes the most sense to me as of right now. And so I don't know. It's tough. And there's no telling too. You draft Tajay Spears, who had, the
The ACL concern.
ACL concern and everything like that. Like, does he come here to New Orleans and then, something goes wrong with that? It's just like, you just never know. You never really know. And so it would be nice. I was on the keep Tajay and Nola train. I was all over it, but
I like Tajay.
yeah, me too. But I thought Kendra Miller was a supremely talented running back too. I did not mind the Kendra Miller pick for New Orleans. It's just been the health.
Yeah. And look, I know that people are talking about Loomis, but this is a collective effort. Like Jeff Ireland heads up the scouting, right? You know
Right.
what I mean? And so, and they got regional scouts. They've got all these different scouts and they put all their heads together. Now, ultimately, it is kind of coaches and GM decision, right? To on who they're going to draft, but they're using the information that they get from some of the, the guys in house. And so I get it. I don't think this is just a Loomis thing, right? You know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
I'm not saying I don't
Agreed.
think, but it's not just a Loomis thing. And I'm not trying
Yeah.
to say that in defense of him or anything. It's just that that's kind of how it works around here. So,
Hmm.
good question. Thank you though. Because I get it. I understand the frustration. I covered this team long enough, and if you've covered it for more than 5 minutes, you understand the frustration that comes along with this team, whether
Hmm.
it's frustration, heartbreak, all the things. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't start writing about this team until right after that 49ers playoff loss in 2011 when they
Mm.
should have gone to the Super Bowl again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that was the one of the lowest points. Like I think that's more of a hurt than the Minneapolis Miracle. Like, I mean, just
Yeah. That was tough. That was the team right
yeah,
there.
yeah, that was the team. That was ring number two. I don't care what
Hmm.
anybody says. That was ring number two. But anyways, I digress. Training camp. Let's get to some real action because we don't want to be super long tonight, but we saw a ton of action out there today.
Yeah.
I think where I want to start is Jake Hayner's series. It was his third. Now, I want to mention the caveat. Let me not go there. I want to start with Jake Hayner, but I also don't want to skip over the fact that Spencer Rattler had the play of the day, in my
Yeah.
opinion. With his hookup with Kevin Austin Jr. for a
Yep.
65-yard touchdown. Perfect read off of play action,
Hmm.
rolling to the left, perfect throw, great catch on the run, beating Mac McCain. That's what I wanted to see out of Spencer Rattler. I think
Yep.
that was pure what you wanted to see. The protection was pretty good. Now he ran with the third team today, you know what I mean? And so it's going to flip flop. And I think, if for all intents and purposes, we should see Hayner for the first and then Rattler second. So, but
Hmm.
I can't glance over that play. What else
Oh
did you
no.
see from Rattler today? And talk about the play if you want to break anything further down that I might have missed.
Yeah, no, the only thing I would mention is that it was just to give people the it was a 65-yard touchdown. Would have been, I think they took that snap from the 35, if I recall correctly. Everything. So just to give you an idea, kind of thing. The other thing about Rattler though is that through his first team series, through his first 3-team series, there we go. Before they got to the carded periods to where they were running either Tennessee's offense or Tennessee's defense, he was a perfect 5 of 5 up
Mm-hmm.
until they started running some of those other systems and things like that. So I thought he had a really, really nice day. He had a nice throw on an out route to
Yeah.
Bub Means, who he loves to connect with. I think that connection's really strong. He had a nice slant that he hit off of a play action out of the shotgun to Stanley Morgan Jr. as well. And then had some nice hookups with A.T. Perry too. So
Yeah.
I really liked what we saw from Spencer Rattler today. I think it was one of his stronger days of late. I would say this. I think it was probably his strongest day since the thigh contusion.
Yeah, because he did not have the particularly good week of practice previous week,
Hmm.
so I think this is a good one. And look, At Perry had a really good day. Like
Yeah, he
I
looked
think
really
he
good today.
had caught 4 passes, a couple of them were deep balls. Like At Perry looked good today, and so
Yeah,
that's to me what I needed to see to make sure that he's on this final roster. And of course I want to
facts.
see more
Yeah.
in the game, but again, I think Rattler. Yeah, I'm with you. He had his best day in over a week, right? And so
Hmm.
preseason was tough and all this other stuff against the 49ers, and it didn't go the way he wanted. But I expect him to rebound because he's got the right attitude, the mentality. Like, I don't think much phases Spencer Rattler, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like he has a lot of confidence that you want in him, or as Dennis Allen, he's got the moxie, you know what I mean? That you want
Right.
to see out of a
Right.
quarterback. But, look, I still feel like this is Jake Hayner's backup job. Like, I just have not wavered
Yeah.
off of that opinion since day one. And it has nothing to do with Spencer Rattler's talent or anything like that. Now, at the same time, I've been waiting for Jake Hayner to just like make this distance whale, like a whale between them two. You know what I mean? But now
Hmm.
it's more like a little tiny tortoise. How has it been? Each quarterback has had a chance to
Yeah.
take a step. They haven't taken a step. But look, I really loved what I saw to Jake Hayner today in that team series 3. I don't still Thunder. If you got the notes, why don't you talk about some of those big plays we saw?
Yeah, my favorite one from Jake Hayner came in the third team set where he went 3 of 3. He had that really strong. I think it's the same possession you're talking about. He had a really
Yep.
strong possession. My favorite one, though, honestly, even though he hooked up on a deep route, was really a dump off, not really a dump off that he had, but he takes the snap, looks left because Michael Jacobson's lined up out wide. That's his first read. Turns and looks there, gets through his progressions, and then finds Jordan Mims on what looked like an angle route. It looked like an angle route to me. I don't know about you, John. But he ended up hitting him for this big yards after catch, run by Jordan Mims on the catch and run there. I thought that was my favorite one. It was on schedule, even though he was going into his later progressions and everything. He moved through his progressions really cleanly. I just thought that was like, okay, that's playing quarterback right there. It's not the big throw. It's not the I sound like Dennis Allen. It's not the big throw. It's not this thing. It's, you know what I mean? That's what I sound like right now. But like, it's not those things. It's not those things. It's not like those big like splash plays. It's like, can you deliver a pass on time where it needs to be when it needs to be there? And I thought Jake Haener did a really good job of that on that play. That was probably one of my favorite plays of camp. Probably my second play, not of camp, but my second play of the day.
Yeah. Progressions, reads, just his ability to be able to go through it. I think that's the biggest thing for me, is that seeing him be able to do that and process things quickly is what I see from Jake Haener. And look, it might not always be there. It might not all of this, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, I know we had got this roundtable question that's coming out on Saints News Network. So make sure you go follow us on there and check that work on Sports Illustrated. But roundtable was asked of us if Derek Carr were to get hurt, would you feel comfortable with Jake Haener and Spencer Rattler playing? And I said yes, because I mean, unequivocally yes. I don't even have to guess, because I feel like I've seen enough from Jake Haener. I feel like his comfort level's there, and I've seen enough from Spencer Rattler. Now, I'm not telling you that they're going to throw for 350 yards and 3 touchdowns, and if they're even going to get in the game, but I feel like they could manage the offense, and I don't think the game is too big for either of them at this point with the coaching that they've got, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think
now,
the Saints
execution could be lacking, but you know what I mean?
I think the Saints are working really hard to develop an offense, this is what a lot of NFL teams are doing. They're working really hard to develop an offense that just about any quarterback can fit in, as long as they can run a system. As long as they can understand a system, make the right reads, make the right decisions, and manage a game, you should be able to plug into an NFL offense and be able to run it. And we've seen that with like several offenses that has been there, sometimes not successfully, but several offenses that has been the goal. I mean, look at San Francisco years ago, right? Having to cycle through 3 quarterbacks before they finally figured out like, oh, Brock Purdy and everything.
Right.
And great for them, like the way that worked out. But like that offense was able to be run by several different people over the course of those couple of years. Jimmy Garoppolo, Sam Darnold, Trey Lance, and then they eventually got to Brock Purdy out of all that. That's a model that a lot of teams are doing in the NFL. The Giants tried it. The Rams did it. The Dolphins have it. They just don't need it because Tua has been great for them. Like, there's just a lot of these pieces that, LaFleur's offense in Green Bay is another example. Like, and these are all, by the way, these are all Shanahan / McVay offenses. Like that's your Bill Walsh, George Seifert, so on and so forth kind of coaching stuff. And that's the goal here.
Oh man, George Seifert, that takes me back. Like, I know Bill Walsh, like I grew up obviously,
of
but
course.
George Seifert was the era I was really watching football, because the early 80s and stuff, I really wasn't old enough to comprehend what was going on. But I always watched, and of course there's a lot of appreciation for Bill Walsh. But anyways, I digress about George Seifert and stuff. But that tree you mentioned, the kind of the system and stuff, and I think that's another thing, is that one of the things that the Saints offense, like you talk to players, everybody's saying the same thing, and there's no division. You know what I mean? And that makes for a system that A, can be understood, and B, that can be executed on, assuming that everybody understands the assignment, right? Like I think that's the big takeaway, is that it's not overcomplicated, because I mean, look, Sean Payton's offense was really complicated. You know what I mean? Like, we talked about the play Drew who had to recite, and I'm like, you lost me at like the 3rd or 4th word, I think, and there was like 12 words in this. You know what I mean? So, but I mean, again, I think sometimes simple is better. But you're hitting on a point where we're at an evolution now in the offense, where the system can work for a lot of players. You got to have talent, but the system and the way it's executed does matter. So I agree there. As far as other things, because I mean, again, I think all 3 quarterbacks had some really good moments today. I think that all 3 of them look pretty good. I think as far as some of the things that defensively, if we can't not talk about the defense, I thought Caleb Ford Dement
Yeah,
kind of low key had a day.
all over
Like
the
he's
place
just
today.
him and Juwan Williams, man. Like, I mean, these are two guys who kind of just got here but are making plays. I thought Rajon Wright had a good day too.
He had a
You know what
solid
I
day.
mean? Like, I mean, these are
Couple
guys
pass
that
breakups.
it's tough because I don't know. I think Rajon's in for
I know.
a
I know.
practice squad spot. You know what I
I
mean?
know.
Because as of right
Yeah.
now, it's Shamar. It's Shamar Jean Charles is who my fifth cornerback is, and so I don't know. It's tough, but these corners. I like the fact that there's corners that can come in here, and of course we know about Rico Payton too. But their corners have become a strength. You know what I mean? And I feel pretty good about these corners that they've brought in and stuff. And so same thing with the safety group. It's really really interesting and fascinating. But anybody else that kind of stood out for you defensively? I could go down the list. I mean, we saw
Well,
Willie Gay Jr. put a
yeah.
thump on Alvin Kamara. I'm like, dude, this
He had
is
a heck of a blitz
practice.
at one point too. That would have been a
Yeah.
sack
Brian
and
Brzee got a
everything.
sack today. I know
Yeah.
that. It's just, but yeah, that Willie Gay Jr. is like, slow down, man. Like you're gonna kill Alvin. Like if and that Jake Hayner, like that was another play.
Oh
Like
yeah,
Jake
that
Hayner
was
doing
another
that
the keeper.
design.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
design like fake, and he kept it left. And I put in my notes. I'm like, if that was a real play and he didn't slide, Chase Young would have probably killed him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that
Because that
was
was just not going to end well for anybody. You know what I mean? So
nah.
I don't know, but we pump up the offense a lot. We talk about the offense a lot because that's usually where the
Mhm.
plays. But want to give some love to defense. I will say this because I definitely don't want to miss this. I turned to you on this rep. It was a Derek Carr pass, short completion to Kevin Austin Jr. Nothing crazy, but the job Taliesin Fuanga
Oh
did on Chase
yes.
Young was
Yes.
just amazing. And just to put it in perspective, I don't know if I can do it justice. I don't know what's called. I don't know what this offense was. I don't know the play. Like none of us do, right? But what I
Mhm.
saw on the play is the pass protection from Taliesin Fuanga and that Polynesian power that Brian Baldinger talked about was on display because he stonewalled Chase Young and then he had just one hand out on him and Young wasn't moving. Like it
Ooh,
was
it was
just
something. It was clean.
perfect.
It
Like
was
that
clean.
that to me, like when you want to know if a rookie's got it or not, like that for me was the okay, he's gonna be just fine because he
Yeah.
did that to Chase Young. I know he can do it to a lot of other people on the next level.
Yeah. It reminded me of like those movies where you would see like an adult put the hand on the head of somebody smaller trying to swing at him and stuff like that. Except that the dude that they did that to was bigger than he was. Like
Right.
it's crazy. And
Yeah.
so no, it was awesome. And what that's a testament to is if I understand it correctly, is what's called Charlie Wong as anchor. His ability to be
Mhm.
able to sink that tush and be able to just dig his heels in and just hold and just be
Right.
there and everything. And
Yeah.
all of it's in the thighs and all that kind of stuff, like that power that he's got coming up from the legs and everything like that. Like just be able to lock in like that against a dude like Chase Young, not only physically but
Bro.
mentally, knowing like that's Chase Young. Like that's not easy to do at all. And
Yeah.
so yeah, no, I was with the that was impressive. That was very,
Yeah.
very impressive. That was one of the more like there was that hand fighting moment that we saw from
Mhm.
Taliesin that really impressed us. But I thought that was more impressive in terms of
Yeah.
what we saw.
That was maybe the block of camp. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
also look that screenplay, like I think
This
what
is
was it?
my
Is
other
this
one. Yeah.
yeah, talk about that one because I think that's another one we should just point out. Like it was
Yeah.
a really weird design, but I don't think anybody's getting Taysom Hill, and he had the convoy out in front of him. Why don't you tell them
Boy,
about what
did
happened?
he.
Woof.
Yeah, so Derek Carr was by my count 12 of 14 on the day. So he had a really
Yeah.
clean day today. Now we missed a little bit of the very first team reps because of the move from outdoor to indoor and stuff like that. But that happens. It's no big deal. But just letting you know that we might have missed a couple there. But the first pass that we saw when we walked in was this screen pass from Derek Carr to Taysom Hill. And when John says that it was weird, he means that. It was a little strange because it wasn't typically like with the screen, you're trying to maybe go over some defenders, or you're outside of where your blocking or tackle box is and stuff like that. But like for whatever reason, something, either the congestion or maybe it was the pass rush, just swept over to the right. So Derek Carr had this little window that he had to get the ball in. But in order for him to do it, he kind of had to duck to his right and then sidearm the ball through. And he did it perfectly. And it hit Taysom Hill in stride. And Taysom Hill turned up. And John, I would say that there was one defender and about 4 blockers, maybe more, out in front of Taysom Hill because of the way that play broke down.
Yeah. It was DeMario was the only person who had a chance.
The only one
and you had Eric McCoy out in front. I think Caesar was there, and another one. Like I say, and he had a convoy, and they blew it dead. But I don't think that play.
Oh, they were stopping.
I think that was touching. Yeah, but that reminded me really nice.
Yeah, that reminded me of 2020, the dump off from Drew Brees to Alvin Kamara that turned into a 52-yard catch and run against Green Bay. And who was leading the way? It was Eric McCoy. He was there again today, ready to do it.
Yeah, I appreciated him at the end when he fell to the ground. He started just doing this swim thing on the ground floor, or in the turf and stuff. That was funny. But,
dude. In game, he caught a body. 100%. In game, he caught a body.
No doubt.
That was a good one to see. We saw like the screen game has been really nice for New Orleans as of late. It was funny because early on we were like, man, I don't think that they've had a screen pass work yet. And then now I can't remember the last one. I feel like every one that we've seen so far has worked as of late.
Yeah, but you bring up a good point, because not only the screen game, but the run game is starting to get a lot more. Like we saw some really good runs up the middle, outside, and it's not like, I don't know if Alvin had any good runs or Jamal. It was like a Jacob Caboti or a Jordan Mims or a James Robinson, and that's no disrespect to Alvin or Jamal. Like they get some good runs, but like we're talking about second, third level runs that just have started opening up more, and they just weren't there at the beginning of training camp. Like, I mean, and this is kind of like the progression we talked about. Like the defense dominates early, the offense catches up, starts punching back, and then now it seems like it's pretty balanced. But I think the good thing is we're starting to see that offensive line opening up holes, which we got to talk about them here in a second. But more running success, which is good to see.
Yeah, big time. We saw some good stuff from Jacob Caboti today, who like is so patient, just kind of like lets everything develop in front of him, and then kind of
nasty moves too, bro.
Some good moves, man. Yeah, he's got a little juke that ain't no joke. That's a bar right there. He got a juke that ain't no joke. Yeah, he was really impressive. And then, of course, like anytime that you can get Mims in space, like there's good stuff happening there. And I thought James Robinson did too. Like, I don't know, man. Like this, not to go back into the Kendrick Miller conversation, but he's got to be looking at it like, all right, I got to get back out there. You know what I mean? Like, there's got to be some drive seeing these dudes.
Yeah, he might be my practice squad running back. Just saying.
James Robinson?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
I mean, I like Caboti a lot, but I just don't. Exactly. But I just. Again, I'm giving away information like, that you'll probably read tomorrow morning and stuff.
I have my 53 member roster coming out tomorrow morning too. So I'll be interested to see where we differ. We'll have to talk about it on the show.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think the last thing, they didn't do any kicking today. So again, that's really neck and neck. I expect a lot more kicking in the Superdome tomorrow, and they're going to be fans. So that's going to be excited. Make sure if you're around, give us a shout. Like, don't be afraid. Tell us hi.
Say hi.
We don't intentionally ignore anything, but just get us, and we'll do our best to say hi for sure. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, but the offensive line looked a little bit different today. I think some people have treated it like it's new information, but it's not. Like Landon Young has played at left guard in the first team before.
Right.
Like, I looked back on the notes. It was day 10 is when I first or when I found it and going through, but Landon Young was getting some looks at left guard, and we kind of talked about him as new James Hurst, you know what I mean? But he got some looks there. Then obviously they're still working on, this line, whether it's Lucas Patrick at left guard, or do they do a Kyle Hergel, or is it going to be a Landon Young, or, who's going to be that in right tackle? Who's going to be that guy? Is it Trevor Penning? Is it Oludo? I have my opinion. I think that it should be Trevor, and I think at left guard, it probably is Lucas Patrick, but I think that what they're waiting for is they're going to get some snaps in this game against the Titans, and they want to make sure that their decision is solidified by that. But, they're mixing it up a little bit on the left guard and right tackle spot. So it's good to see because you need versatile offensive linemen to get
Yep.
through an 18 week season.
Yeah, I appreciate what Dennis Allen said in his post game in his post practice presser, excuse me,
Eh,
where he
fast
spoke a
forward.
little bit about where he spoke a little bit about like, look, you got to get these guys these reps around because if they're going to be depth players, they're going to be backup players, and you want to see what the versatility is. So put them out there and give them the opportunities to play at different positions. I think we've seen Hergel also at center, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly, at other times and stuff like that. And then today we saw Trevor Penning and it was again Oli Udoh that kind of filtered in at right tackle. But then in addition to Landon Young and Lucas Patrick, like we've seen Shane Lemieux take first team left guard reps. That was really early in camp, but we saw that. We saw Nick Saldivari, of course, do that, who we did see make an appearance today, just
Yeah.
watching on. So, but
Still no Kendra
presence
Miller.
is progress. Right. Right. But presence is progress. So anytime that, like you see a player out, like that typically means a pretty good thing. And then we've also seen, Kyle Hergel play at left guard with the first team and stuff like that. So I think that there's, a whole lot that you can take away from the idea that like, yeah, okay, there's some competition maybe that's heating up at certain places. At certain times, Lucas Patrick even playing some center today too. But I think a lot of times it's information gathering as well as we've talked about before.
Yeah, I mean the more versatile you are, the better use you are to the roster. You know what I'm saying? Like it just is like, a guy. I'm just taking off the top of my head, like Ugo Amadi. He plays special teams. He can play safety. He can play the slot. Like, you know what I mean? Like you just need that versatility to be able to hang around, just like a linebacker. You need to be able to play a lot of different spots in addition to special teams. So I mean, there's just other values you can get out of some people, and some players, I guess, if you will. So it's a thing. Keep an eye on it. I expect guys like Landon Young and Shane Lemieux to be primary reserve offensive linemen, maybe jumbo guys or big part of special teams. I feel like Oli Udo's trending to make the roster. I think he's turned it on a little bit more. I think he's still having some issues like with holding and false starts. But I think that can
penalties
get
are the
cleaned
big
up.
thing.
That's really been the biggest thing I've seen. But just wasn't too much that leapt off the page, to begin camp. But I think he's starting to put a lot of things together more. You know what I mean? So being more confident. So we're going to see. It's going to be fascinating. I keep saying that, but the final roster cuts are just like this is like Christmas to me, and I know it's really crappy business because at the same time you got a lot of players, 37 players that won't be having a job. You know what I'm saying? Like this is some of them. That's the end of the line for them. Some of them go to the UFL. Some will go to the CFL. Some will maybe get on the practice squad, and some will just keep working and waiting for the next opportunity. So I mean that is the harsh reality of the business, if you will. But before we get out of here, this is a pretty good question, because this has been an observation. There's been some times where Carr's placement of the ball is just not where it needs to be. We saw it in the Tulane practice a little bit on some of the misconnections with Olave. And again, go back to past episodes, like, subscribe, all that fun stuff, because we did talk about some of this on Tuesday, how we're not really that concerned about the Olave train and Carr connection. But, the ball placement, what do you see is maybe missing? Like what breakdown? What do you see like when it throws behind somebody or just not there?
Yeah.
Is it just the read? Is it the execution? Or is it just them not being on the same page?
Yeah, typically it's about calibration most of the time. Now, there are other times, and it's obvious when it is, if a ball comes out late or if a ball comes out too early, things like that. But those things are easy to see. So the nuance really happens, as far as I understand it, because we did ask Derek Carr about this last year, and he talked a lot about it in terms of just like getting to learn the receivers and understanding the speed, especially for a guy like Rashid Shaheed, especially for a guy like Chris Olave, who's fast as all get out too. And so I think a big part of it is calibrating to these guys. And now they're running not new routes or anything like that, but like there's different combinations, there's different timing. All these things are a little bit different in the offense and stuff like that. And so I'm not trying to make excuses or anything like that, or make it sound like it's not like an individual thing, but it's very rarely an individual thing. Like, just to be honest about it, it's oftentimes like, what's the calibration between the snap, the drop back, the protection, the throwing lane, and then where that player is going to be, what's the position of the defender, and then how do you work your way around that and stuff. So it's easy to take a snapshot of it and say, oh, well, that ball should have been further towards the outside to help lead him a little bit more to the thing. But what if at the time that the ball was being released, the defender was over the top before he crashed down to the and attacked on the inside, then
Yeah.
we might look at it on tape and pause it at one point when the defender's already made his move. But it's different. It's a different look at that point than what the quarterback got before he let go of the ball. So there's a lot of these things that really all kind of go into it. It's not just as simple as like throw and catch.
Sure.
But that being said, there are times where the ball comes out late. There are times where the ball is inexplicably behind and stuff like that. And so I think in other times that's just about understanding and being able to execute what it is you have to execute. That just comes with familiarity of the system when it comes to timing, early, late throws, things like that. And then when it comes to like a ball being behind or too far outside and everything like that, it's just oftentimes gauging the speed of the receiver and where that's going to be. And so sometimes does the receiver throttle down? Does the receiver take an angle coming back to attack the football as opposed to continuing his trajectory to the sideline and stuff like that? So like all of those things that I just said, you have to figure out this fast, you know what I mean? Like a snap second and stuff like that. And so like all that goes into it. So that's typically what any quarterback will say when you ask them about ball placement, especially on those types of routes, outbreaking routes, crossing routes, and things like that. Ideally, we see that get better this year. But I will say the night after or the day after, the morning after that Tulane practice, Chris Olave, Derek Carr, 3 of 3, all 3 of those either crosses or outbreaking routes. The ball placement was better, all these other things. So it's just about the work. It's time on task, as Drew Brees would say.
Yeah, well, that was going to say is that guy obviously set a standard for people. Like I get it. Drew was the pinpoint accuracy guy. Like I get that, and I know I've said no matter what quarterback comes through, probably the next 20 years, if they're not Drew Brees, then they're not Drew Brees. I get that and understand it, but we've moved on, from that era a couple of years now removed or several years now removed. And I get it. They want to find that guy. And I think Carr's capable of being a really good quarterback. And of course, Drew's in a level of his own, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying he's going to be Drew, but I think he can bring the Saints what they need to be able to win games. And it's all about the execution. It's about defense. I mean, it can come together, but we obviously need to see it. And the biggest thing is consistency, but this offense is going to fit him well.
Yeah. And look, that's all that to say, there's also still times where the throw's bad.
Yeah.
It happens. Sometimes the throw's not where the throw needs to be. You know what I mean? And I think Derek had one of those last year to where he was like, oh, that was just me being dumb. And everything. I think it was like an interception that he threw or something like that. Yeah. And it was at home because I remember like a visual memory. I could see the press conference room and all that kind of stuff. And he was just like, yeah, that was just me. He said, like, that was just me being dumb, or that was just me being stupid and trying to do something, X, Y, and Z or whatever it was and everything. And so there's like those times too, to where it's just like, sometimes the throw's wrong. And then I see the comment next about like, I wish that they spent time after practice together to get the ball played. They do. They spend time before practice. They spend time after practice. They spend time during practice. Like you do all that. Sometimes you still just throw the ball wrong. And it's a bad throw. And then you just got to move on to the next one and hope that you don't do it again.
Yeah, for sure. And I think Carr, we've talked about it, that he's a lot more taking ownership of that this year, making sure that it's a bad ball. I mean, we hear it out there, you know what I mean? Saying that,
oh yeah,
I should have thrown that better, done that. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's a difference. And not saying he didn't do that at all the first year, but he was even talking to Kay Adams and talking about how this year he's made it a point to really make sure he says yes to a lot of his teammates and to build the chemistry and the trust and all that other stuff. And, which also Kay Adams and that Dennis Allen, Taysom Hill almost playing same linebacker almost just blew my mind personally. That was the craziest
right? We used to ask DA about that jokingly and everything. And so it was cool to hear like, oh yeah, no, I definitely wanted to do that.
Yeah. Taysom Hill, the pass rusher you never knew. That's crazy. All right. Well, Ross, that's about going to wrap us up today for day 21. We'll be back tomorrow. We might try to do something from the Superdome on Friday.
Yeah.
They got some renovations and stuff, but obviously what's coming up at LouisianaSports.net and anything on Locked On that everybody out there who probably already subscribes to your show, but if you don't subscribe to it for sure and check out LouisianaSports.net, that should know.
Yeah. I just put a story out earlier today. I was a little bit ahead on the story about Foster Moreau and his playing through injury last year, which is why I asked him some stuff about it, everything. So I pulled all that together, including some sources and stuff like that, and some source material to add some additional context around it. So I have a piece out about that I'm really happy about. Observations, of course, we got the 53-man roster dropping tomorrow morning, and that will be tomorrow's episode of Locked On Saints as well. Kind of a talk through of it, where I won't linger on easy things like the quarterback position, and I'll move on to like some of the things that we know are going to be a little bit tougher and everything like that. So that's pretty much the next couple of days, and then getting ready for the game. What about you, man? What you got coming up?
I mean, that 53-man roster is going to hit at 7 o'clock in the morning Central Time. So, get your popcorn ready. Or not your popcorn, get your coffee ready, as we would much rather have that at 7 o'clock in the morning. But yeah, that's going to be the big thing. And then obviously we go into preseason mode. And once preseason is over, then we're regular season mode. So it's, again, there's some other behind the scenes featurettes and stuff working on and all that. But, it's never stops. The grind don't stop. You know what I mean? So.
Wouldn't want it to.
For sure.
Wouldn't want it to.
If it does, then there's some problems for sure.
That's right.
All right. Well, guys, can't thank you enough for tuning in to another episode of Second and Saints. I almost said Locked On Saints.
Yeah, I heard that. I heard that.
I'm like, no. I mean,
that's like me hosting Locked On NFL on Mondays or Tuesdays and every day when I'm like, thanks for coming into another episode of Locked On Saints. We got to start over.
I think I looked at your Locked On Saints, and that was what I was fixated on. And I was like, oh, yeah, brain, duh. You know what I mean? And so what happens? No, the show you're listening to is Second and Saints, but obviously check out Locked On Saints. You know what I mean? And most of you already do, and you should. But we'll be back on Friday to talk about day 22, which should be the final training camp practice, and get all that information from Superdome. If you're out there, say hi. Obviously we got the game on Sunday. We'll figure all that stuff out soon enough. Being back home will be great, and we cannot wait. So guys, thanks so much for tuning in. Shout out to Foco for helping supply all our awesome merch and stuff that we have for this show and giving away. And we're going to be giving some stuff away here soon. They guys dropped a new hat that I think fans are going to want. So stay tuned for that as well. So, but on behalf of Mr. Ross Jackson, I am John Hendricks signing out for another episode of Second and Saints. You guys have a great night or day or afternoon or whenever you're listening to. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
Love you.